Well, welcome to HR Doctors. My name is Brent. I am the owner of the Vancouver Express Employment Professionals Office. HR Doctors, for those of you who don't know, actually came through our core values. At our office, we see ourselves as helpful, resourceful, driven, relentless, and sensible. And my business partner happened to see that happened to align with HRDRS, HR Doctors. Through our core values, through our mission and vision of helping our community here in Vancouver, as a staffing and recruiting firm, we have been working with businesses, with business owners, and trying to provide as much info and context as we possibly can into what you need to do as a business to better hire, better retain. And we also produce a ton of content and share with different people from a job seeker perspective of what you can do as a job seeker or as an employee to better manage things in your process. We have felt over the last few years that there has definitely been a disconnect. There's a wedge. It keeps getting driven further and further apart. Businesses have a hard time hiring people, have a hard time retaining, are doing everything they can, trying to be more competitive. There's a pendulum that we feel has swung more to the employee side now, which is great. It's giving them more ability to have more control in the process and an ability to ask more of their employers. Ken and I connected. Ken is a certified professional behavioral analyst. He's a strategist, communicator, and a speaker. He uses behavioral profile assessments as a tool for better recruitment, retention, and understanding for owners and employees, ultimately helping employees and employers communicate more effectively. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Oh, hi, Brent. Well, thanks for having me. I think we're going to have some fun today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We use DISC assessments in our business when we're looking to better understand an employee when we hire. And I understand that you use your behavior profiling more so to help employers better understand how they can communicate better with their team, but it also ties directly into the employee and them understanding their profile and how they can communicate better with themselves, their coworkers, and with their employer. And I think it's great. I think it's a tool. Again, we talk about that disconnect and needing employers and employees to better manage and bridge that gap. So tell us more about behavioral profiling and why, as a business owner, it's something that I need to know about.
Well, first of all, you've underlined the key word. It's understanding.
Right.
I mean, you're dealing with people. People are complicated. People are complex. And we tend to not dig deep enough when we're hiring to truly understand. We're often just looking to fill a space. We know what skills in theory that people need, but they don't always represent themselves at an interview. You know this better than I do, that what they're going to do. So by using assessments, and there's many, the tool that I use is DISC, as you do, there's many more. You create what I like to call the baseline of understanding. What are their wants? What are their needs? How to communicate with them? How not to communicate with them? What's it going to take them to get there every day, stay all day, and come back again tomorrow? So when using the tool, it eliminates a lot of bad hires, because quite often people misrepresent themselves at interview. They claim they can do something. Their resume may reflect who knows what. Then they actually show up and then within 2 months you're going, who is this person? So when you go through the DISC assessment, and by the way, we are going to do Brent. We've done it. I can show you. The profile, I can assure you, is correct. So when you go through the assessment, it should align with the person you interviewed. If something is off, then the odds of it working out, for example, they're going to tell you on one page what they bring to the table, and which we will do on yours. But if that's not what you're looking for, then I can assure you it's not going to work out. You may hire them, but they're not going to stay because, as you know, it eliminates the job not as advertised. It also helps you actually articulate and develop a culture.
Right.
So when you hire people, the culture is imperative. How are they going to fit? And you had shared a story with me, which we don't have to get to, but it illustrated the fact that skills were great, but didn't fit the culture.
Right.
So you've heard from a lot of people, hire for fit, hire for fit. I'd like to add one word to that: hire for fit and stick.
Yeah.
Fit and stick. In other words, how do they stay? So that was a bit long-winded, but if you profile people, and by the way, here's the other thing about profiling: it's never judgmental.
Right.
There's never a good profile. There's not a bad. I'm always asked, Ken, what's a good profile? What's the role?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? And always, what is your culture? What is the culture of your company or your team or that division? Remember, different divisions within a company might have a different culture. So, and also when people are being told or being asked, Brent, to do an assessment, I really encourage people, there is no pass fail.
Right.
You won't get the job. You can't fail an assessment.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think, oh, I failed it, I didn't get it. No, no, no. It just is part of the hiring process. You do interviews, you do reference checks, you do an assessment. So that's why owners should do it. In other words, think of it as an investment, not an expense.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like a couple things. One, you touched on something that one of our previous guests, Kathy Enrose, shared. She's been a director of HR in many companies, and she talked about hiring people who are culture adds and not culture fits. And I think, you know, and again, another past guest, Clark, who were actually just recently shared some content with, spends his time helping job seekers better understand the process that they need to go through to be competitive job seekers. And really what we digged into as well is, you know, where this kind of disconnect has come from. And you talked about how employers need to add it to their process or even have a process. And that's part of what we started sharing, which led us to the HR doctors. Was we started opening our kind of doors and saying, here's everything we do, whether you use Express or not, we have a defined process. We think you should follow one yourself, from understanding what your goals of the position are, to being able to properly market and advertise for it, to be able to interview effectively for it, to be able to assess fit, you know, through behavior-based interviews and also through assessments, ultimately through to hiring somebody. And I've talked about this before. I say that there's 3 pillars to a successful hire. One being whether you use Express or not, what your like front end process is like. And I really agree with you, Kim, that you need to have a really established and process driven system in your business on how you're going to hire people and make sure that everybody in your team understands and knows it. And again, every business knows how costly turnover is, how costly a bad hire is. And this is another tool that can either be used to help you better hire people, or to help you better understand and better retain and better coach and performance manage. And that's pillar 2, is how you train, onboard, performance manage, coach. And then to me, that pillar 3, I often say, is that intangible, the candidate. And sometimes you could do all the front end right, you could do all the training and everything, and things don't work out. And I think, you know, based on our previous chats, to me, it really ties into, you know, DISC. And sometimes things won't work out, where somebody maybe has a family member that gets sick or passes away and they have to, you know, leave a role. There are things that are out of our control. But to me, this is one of those things that often will get blanketed in with, oh, it was the candidate, it was them, we did everything right. And you may have done as much right as you could, but this is something that maybe ties it back to onus on the employer, especially with the investment we're putting in. And I think that ties into like the next piece we're going to talk about, which is just how complicated people are, like how many different variations there are in the DISC assessments, and why using a tool like this is so important, because you can't just blanket everybody into 2 or 3 categories. These are my sales guys, these are my ops, these are these guys, these are the customer service, because they all fit these personalities. You can obviously have success in all different roles with all different styles. So yeah, if you could talk a bit about how complicated people truly are and why this tool is so helpful to help see through that.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about how many people you engage with. Well, maybe not so much since COVID, but just think about how many people you interacted with in your work life on a daily basis. And also think about the people you like versus the people you didn't like.
Right.
Because we tend to treat people we like very different than people we don't like, which goes back to about being complicated. And the truth is, and I'm going to go back to what you said at the outset, it's about understanding. The first thing you have to understand is who you are yourself. Then you have to understand who these other people are. And then I advocate, because you're not the same, let's find the middle point, let's find the shared outcome, and let's be respectful of it. For example, I had a client that would send out emails at 4:30 in the morning. And they get really angry when they weren't responded to.
Right.
So when I met with him, he was kind of, like, what's the story? I'm the boss, they should, and so on. And all I asked him was one very simple thing. Will you acknowledge that they're all not you? He said, yeah, I could do that. I said, can you really do that? Because if you can accept that, then we can work together. But if you think that everybody is going to be exactly like you, this isn't going to work. And that's why you have such turnover. The other problem it created on the culture side, Brent, is people were afraid to open their inbox because now it's 7 a.m, they haven't even got there yet, and it's full. And if they may have planned to do something that day, and now their day is stressful.
Right.
So why create stress when we don't have to? So if you understand yourself, understand others. And the other thing is, when it comes back to about people we like, people we don't like, and why they're complicated, the people we like, we tend to enable. Oh, that's just Brent. That's okay. He just always yells and screams, even though it's bad behavior. And I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But people we don't like, the first time that, hey, the rules say you can't do that. So that's where things get a little bit complicated. Now you've got this double standard. So we seem to shoot ourselves in the foot a lot by doing all these things that if we just stood back for a minute and go, okay, for example, some people need a lot more time to get information. Some people, done, I'm finished, let's move on. Other people, they need more information. So now we're talking about disconnects. They're always at a disconnect is, why haven't you done it yet? Why are you procrastinating? Well, I don't have enough information. Now we've got conflict. But if you understood, if I give them what they need and get out of their way, we're going to be fine. So you had your 3 pillars. I think to kind of capsulize this, I have my 3 R's. You have 3 pillars, I have 3 R's. If you use profiling, what you want to do is reveal the talent of a potential hire.
Yep.
Then you want to release the talent. Like, let them do what you hired them to do. Don't micromanage. Then ultimately, you as the employer, you realize the benefit of the hire. The 3 R's.
Nice.
So I think it goes back to what you were saying about everything. But let's be honest, it's hard work. People are complicated. All of this is hard. There's no simple. And the other thing we tend to do, we tend to hire to replace a person, not the job.
Yeah.
And you know that as well as I do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a couple things that you said that make sense to kind of plant a flag on. I mean, I think whether it's an owner, a manager, an HR person, I think we'd all pride ourselves on, giving everybody like a fair opportunity and treating everybody equally. At the same time, I mean, as soon as you said it, it totally resonated. I swear I saw like a meme or a short video or TikTok or something about like, the person in your friend group who like gets on your nerves, or you all of a sudden don't like them, and then everything they do, and it, the video pans over and they're eating chips loudly, and all of a sudden it's like that's nails on the chalkboard, and you're like, oh my God, I hate that guy. And it's like, like all it takes, I guess, especially, and sometimes it's like a subconscious thing of something, or somebody does something, and in business it could be a failure to meet an undescribed expectation, or doing something that, depending on the person's disc profile, may like hurt their feelings or something. And the next thing you know, like, we're not on the same page anymore. There's a total lack of alignment, and not having these tools. And even more so, I mean, the one that totally resonates with me as well, that I've heard with a couple clients lately, is that, like, that question, like, you're gonna agree that, not everybody's you. And I think that's such like a powerful thing, because especially with entrepreneurs, we often really try to, like, find that person that's going to do the job the way I do it, how I do it, because the way the business was created and got to where it is now is because the way I do things. And it's so hard to release that control and trust.
But that's a key point. You can release, you can maintain control, but you can give people sets of boundaries. You're good to do this. Let them go. Again, that's the reveal, release, and so on. And you're spot on about somebody might be a great chef, so they think they can own a restaurant, and then they build sort of the hire around that, but it's not that singular. Again, it's people are complicated. It's even the way people hear things. Like when you're talking to people and then you wonder, didn't they hear me? And it's
Yeah.
not that they didn't hear you, they have different listening styles. And one of the things we can determine in a profile is there are some people that have selective hearing. And very simply, you're having a conversation. Well, we'll get to you. If it doesn't meet their agenda, they'll do one of two things. They'll either try and talk you back to where you started, or be the dismissive. Now, I'm
Right.
not saying that's good or bad, but if you understand that about the person you're talking to, it might help the dialogue.
You can
And then
label them.
then there's other people that don't really listen to hear. They just want the conversation to keep going because they're very people centric. They just want to talk.
Right.
So they're not really listening to hear. They're just listening to talk. You have other people that they're like a sponge. They take everything in because they need information. So they're
Yeah.
constantly taking in information. And then you have critical listeners. And what they're listening for, is it correct or is it incorrect? And they're not trying to be judgmental. It's not about them being correct. And those are the people that live very much by rules. So when you're having a conversation with somebody that's going to tell you as opposed to ask you, think about now experiences even in interviews or with employees when there was a problem and when they came in to talk about it, did you actually ask them or did you tell them?
Right.
Because that's when it goes sideways. And then we have expectations minus realities conflict. Expectations, oh, we've cleared this up, I told them. The reality is you didn't give them what they needed.
Yeah.
Now you have a conflict. And then it festers and then so on. And then inevitably in your world, and then well, why did they leave? We did everything right. Which goes back to something you said before, we want to be fair and so on. So these tools are just a part of the process, everybody. They're not the be all, they're not the end all. And by the way, there are many assessment tools out there. I love DISC, I've used others. And assessment tools measure all kinds of things. But if you're going to use them properly, is all I'm advocating. Don't just do it, put it in a drawer and forget about it. It's great during performance reviews. It's goal for goal setting. It just makes for more harmonious and I think a safer workplace.
Yeah. Well, and as you've touched on, I think a number of really good points that ties in to another point we talked about, which is, you offer this service primarily to employers to either help them better understand how to hire or how to better engage with their teams, communicate with their teams. And obviously, like, if a business is going to spend money with you or with anybody, or anybody spends money anywhere, it's about value and the value they get out of it. And we talked about, the greatest value proposition is how that disconnect obviously affects money and the bottom line, and how the disconnects in the workplace will inherently lead to either, productivity losses, morale breakdowns. Anything further that kind of comes to mind
Yes.
when looking at that breakdown?
There's the economic side of it, of course, and anybody that's ever hired, when we tell people the cost of a rehire is usually about 2.4% of somebody's salary, they go, that can't be. But when you actually work the numbers, that's what it is. But from my side, where I see it is, say it's a dental office, okay? And every time you go in for your hygiene appointment, there's a new hygienist. So first couple times, you may be okay with that. But if every time you go in, it's a new hygienist, it's a new person at the front, it's something like that, it kind of sets off some flags, like what's going on here? And inevitably, when that does happen, you'll say, so what happened to Brent, the hygienist? They're usually taught to say, I don't know, as opposed to just simply as simple as, oh, we got a different offer, he's gone to a different office, we wish them luck. You see, you can change the dynamic, but people's perception get a little bit skewed when all they see is change. People by nature want consistency. They want to know when they walk into a place, whether it's a retail store, whatever it is, and not have to ask, what happened to, every time they go in.
Well, I think it
That's how I see it.
even specific to like the business, it ties in less when you're getting positive experiences.
Yeah.
But a dentist office is a great example where you're getting your gums poked and prodded and you're getting hurt and you're going, what's going on here? Like, I had this one person this one time, or I had, my,
Yeah.
my person who's been doing it for ages, and where's she? Because it was so much better before, or whatever it may
So,
be. Yeah.
so the cost is the word that also in people management is all this is really about relationships,
Mm,
employer with employee. So go back to the dental office. Yeah, somebody's sticking a sharp instrument in your mouth. At least if you've built a bit of a relationship.
yeah.
They might remember the last time you went away, you were going on a trip. They can begin a dialogue. If
Hmm.
every time it's new, it's a bit off-putting. There is no relationship. And after a while, as a consumer, I don't want to invest anymore in this relationship. I'm tired of me doing all the work. So that's where I see it's a negative when there's constant turnover.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the multiplied cost of turnover. I mean, I can do the math for people really
Yeah.
quick, because I think it's a great like a tool to understand what the true cost is. I mean, I look at, let's say if you hire a $50,000 person annually within their first 6 months, in most positions at that rate is how long it's going to take for somebody to truly be up to speed and be able to start returning value. So you've got a $50,000 or $25,000 hard cost within those 6 months. Also within that 6 months, you've got an opportunity of loss where the person isn't able to be fully functional in their role. And then you've also got the lost time cost of other people needing to train, onboard, help coach. And then for myself, I use myself as an example. I don't bill myself out as a consultant, but I know what our business generates from a revenue perspective, and I know what
Sure.
my contribution is to it. And if I take myself out of, my sales driving shoes and put myself in my coaching training, then I take that opportunity cost as well and add that in. And so you get, that person who's maybe in 6 months a $25,000 hard cost, but it's easy to turn that into a $75,000 all-in cost, and then take it if it was a bad hire, where you've then lost further opportunity with your suppliers, your vendors, your customers, whoever it may be, with those relationships being impacted. And then also turn in, if you do experience turnover, the time it takes to rehire, because the market is so tight right now, it can take months to find like the right person to rehire. And in that time, you're then asking of your team to put more time, effort, and energy. And I mean, those costs can go, for that $50,000 person, where our hard cost was at 25 or 30,000 with the extra, government burdens, we could be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs based on that failure to have that right person. And again, why I feel there's such a need, and why employers have put a substantial process on the front end, why they need to have that really great process in that middle phase, and use tools like these to make sure they're doing everything they can to protect those investments.
I mean, if you think it through, and you're right, of course, if you think it through, why not use them? I love what you call them, they're tools. I mean, they're at your disposal. You can use them. Again, managing people is hard. Why not use a tool that's there to make it a little easier?
Yeah.
To try and secure a better hire, one that's going to create a win-win. Again, reveal, release, realize.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Why would they come to an agency like yours? Because you're a SME, you're a subject matter expert. You're the guy.
Yeah.
Why? And here I have to say something to that thing. If you look up DISC online, there's 16 million hits. And I'm always getting people say, well, I can just get a disc done online, for whatever. And when we go through yours shortly, yes, you can get them done online, but unless you're trained or certified, what's it mean?
Yeah.
And I've had people take them so out of context that it's kind of embarrassing. They decided that they read one bar of the four, which we're going to do, and they put somebody in a position that was so wrong that they called me back in 3 months and said, so how do I get rid of them?
Right.
And I said, well, I shouldn't have hired them. So to everybody, yeah, they're out there. You can get this done. You can get them done. Also, there's other tools. But again, if you're going to use them to your advantage. And I keep saying use it as an investment tool, not an expense, because you want your people to be an asset.
You know,
In my opinion.
I can give a great testimonial specifically to that, which is I've used DISC assessments and have had DISCs done on me for, I want to say 15 years. I'm pretty sure we used them when I was with the Forzani group before I got into recruitment 11 years ago. And, you know, in the last couple of weeks we've been leading up to this, I had reached out because I had an employee in our office where, you know, again, we have a really established process on the front end, and I feel that we do a really good job from a training perspective when we use DISC assessments as tools in our office. And I really feel like if an employee isn't successful within that initial probationary period, that there's a couple ways to assess fit and whether the person's committed, whether they're competent, you know, is it culture? And we've got our core values, we've got our vivid vision. And I couldn't figure out where that fit, where that disconnect was from. And so you and I were talking, and I gave you a brief scenario and gave you a little snapshot of her DISC. And I've been doing DISC for 15 years. And you identified in a few seconds, you know, again, she was a high D and a high S, and you immediately were like, that's a bit of an anomaly. Those are opposing like characteristics. Pardon?
It's a push-pull.
Yeah, it's a push-pull.
And person.
And you gave me some coaching and guidance. And I, for sure, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I'm by far not an expert and had blind spots myself, and ultimately went back and gave some coaching and guidance and gave feedback from our discussion and said, hey, I actually spoke with someone and brought you up as an example. And, you know, this is the feedback that I got. And within a month saw a drastic improvement in her ability to do her job, because one, I like connected with her in the right way, gave her the right, like, you know, coaching and feedback and direction that she needed. Ultimately, what you also helped me see through that is that the person just wasn't a fit for our business. She hit the skill piece and ultimately was doing the things we needed. But even after that was done, we realized that wasn't the case. And up to that point, I really felt that I didn't have enough information. And had I not connected with you, I would have either made a decision earlier, but with maybe not for the right reasons, or wouldn't have made the decision and ended up running into the same problems later in the path.
And I was glad to help. But that's what I do. You know, it's about making a difference. And that's really part of all of this stuff. You know, if you think about it, when you hire somebody and they think they've got the job and it's not working, you know, they've come to work one day and you're sending them home. So you've affected their life.
100%.
I mean, it's kind of, it's serious business. I mean, yes, we joke about it, and I love doing this, but it's also about making a difference. Let's put the right person for your business in the right place. You deserve, as an owner, a return on that investment, and they deserve the chance to show off their talents.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Well, profiling draws a line and affirms that you've made a better hire. And it's something you said before. And sometimes life gets in the way and changes it. So it's not the profile, it's not the resume, it's things. And yeah, sometimes people leave. And the other thing is sometimes it's time for people to leave.
Right.
You know, you've got to call it a day. But all of this, again, we go back to your pillars, my 3 R's. I guess what I'm trying to say, take a moment. It's worth it.
Yeah.
You know, and right now, as we come out of, you know, the pandemic, so on, I'm finding people are making a lot of mistakes. They're so desperate to fill a spot that they're kind of sometimes pretzeling themselves to make it fit.
Right.
You might have encountered that. And take a look at your business. You've got to make different decisions based on different information because we live in a different time.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the exercises I was helping people do during the worst of the pandemic is step back and look at the people that you've got working for you. Ask yourself, do you remember why I hired? Just ask yourself that. And if the answer is I don't know, then why are they there?
Yeah.
Or what was like did you say, what was the process? Because it's different now. So again, profiling just helps you. And actually we talked about disconnects and all that stuff. But the plus is, I like to call it the disconnect.
Yes. Yeah.
Connect. It can turn a negative into a positive. So if you want, we can have a look at your profile.
Yeah. Well, it was just, well, you touched on something that I think is really like valuable to discuss, because we talked about like how it can negatively affect your money, but also how it can positively affect it. I mean, the biggest thing I've been talking about in the last little while is how I truly feel there's been a pendulum swing. I've seen a ton of information come out recently about how, years ago, like we're talking 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was you show up to work, you follow the chain of command, post World War II, you didn't ruffle feathers, you showed up, you went home, you lived your life, and you were able to live a good life in doing so. And then there was like the free trade market where China was able to come in and lower the cost of goods across the board. And that made things from an employee's standpoint even harder, where pay rates weren't increasing with inflation. And now you hear all the time talking about inflation, talking about a recession coming, all these different things. Well, COVID was the linchpin piece that started to swing that pendulum really back in the employee's favor. The work from home capabilities, the remote flexibility. I mean, even before that, obviously employers were doing whatever they needed to do to attract top talent. And I really think that's like where additional disconnect can come from, is where when you have these top performers, there are other companies vying for them. There are, huge contributions that these people can make. And if you don't invest in tools like these to make sure you're effectively communicating with them, we're obviously talking about the bad case scenario of hiring a bad person, or, not realizing someone's not a fit. But even worse, if you have like absolute linchpin critical people in your office and they don't communicate, or you aren't communicating effectively with them, they're not seeing like the perceived value or whatever it may be. And you could lose these absolute A players that are critical for the business. And it's such a critical thing to just be aware of, that it's not just about protecting yourself from making mistakes, but it's about that other piece that you can do to make sure that as an employer, you're investing in your team and making sure that they understand as well. Because a lot of what you do isn't just, hey, owner, here's the discs, here's how you can get the best out of your people. It's, hey, everybody, this is how as a collective you guys fall together. These are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. This is how, as you guys collaborate together, how you can be this amazing machine.
And thank you for putting that way, because if we go from the negative to the positive, when you walk into an office, or when you walk into a dental clinic, a medical clinic, you can pick up the vibe. Yep. You know when people are happy and when they're not happy. At least I know I can when I walk in. And if it's a very positive, productive vibe, you're going to want to come back again. You're going to feel better. But if you're in there and everybody's got their eyes down and, a bit, you could just feel the weight of it. Right. And you're saying, why do I want to be here? This isn't good. But the thing you just said about all that, because done right, the collective, what that leads to is better integration, because now you integrate it. And when you've got great integration, you have engagement. People become engaged. When everybody is hiding because they don't want to, put their head above the water or so on, you don't get engagement. And then when you go integration, engagement, what does that lead to? Action. And when people are busy and it's buzzing, it's great. You got a great culture. People want to be there. Also, if you can create that kind of scenario, the people that are working there become your ambassadors. Mm-hmm. I was once working with a dental clinic, and I asked somebody, so 2 questions. If you knew somebody was looking for a dentist, would you recommend they come here? And they went, no.
Brutal.
The second question was, if you knew there's somebody who could fill the void in the job we're looking for, would you recommend they come? No.
Yeah.
It's got to be yes to both.
Yeah.
It has to be. You want, brand ambassadors. Yeah. So again, what you're saying, you got to tie it all together. And that takes a little bit of thought. It takes some effort.
Yeah. It
takes coordination. And it's not just simple, get me a warm body. Like, I think those days are done.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It worked here in Calgary in the 80s. It was easy. But it doesn't work. Again, I keep harping. Take the time to make the investment. Then you deserve to get a return on your investment.
Yeah, and the flip goes the same for the employee or the job seeker, is that just as you said, the warm body like isn't desirable anymore. More
No.
and more people are being brought up with technology, and like it's really, I think, critical for everybody to be upskilling, and even knowing whether, if you're an employee, knowing your disc, knowing your communication style, like knowing the value you bring and how what works and doesn't work, I think is critical.
Well, just one quick sidebar. It's not just how do you apply this behavior to the workplace, it's how do you apply it to life,
Right.
life
Yeah.
partners, family. A lot of us have disconnects in outside of work, and we
Yeah.
can't figure out how come, why is everybody always angry at me? Well, there's probably other reasons. And by the way, um, a disc assessment is purely behavioral. It's not
Right.
psychological. So I want
Right.
to be clear, because when people meet me and they find out what I do, I'm always asked right away, are you like the guy on, Criminal Minds? No,
Right.
no, that's psychological. And the other is, are you doing me now? Are you doing me now? No, we don't do that. But it's a fascinating science. And I think if that could segue, I want to tell you a little story before I do your profile, Brent,
Sure.
about the guy that created it.
Great.
His name was William Moulton Marston, and he was a Harvard professor in the 30s. And he was a bit of an interesting guy. He wasn't very conventional. Anyway, he came up with the idea about like behaviors, people that were aggressive people and so on. And he created this disc. And disc, by the way, is an acronym. It stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. So he put all this together and so on. And then eventually it was bought by the military. And then the military deployed it and so on. And then in the 60s, another fellow came along and monetized it. And that's how you get to disc. And that's why you get 16 million hits, because this guy never, ever trademarked it, copywrote it. He had no business acumen.
Right.
But the little story I'd love to tell you about him is, for the people watching or listening to this, if you've ever read the comic book Wonder Woman, it was created by this man under the name Charles Moulton. So the guy that created this ultimately created Wonder Woman, the comic book, and in the 1990s was inducted into the Comic Book Hall of Fame.
Amazing.
So it is kind of, he also was instrumental in the lie detector.
Interesting.
Just kind of a little bit of human interest on all of this, but
yeah. Oh, it's great to hear the tie-ins.
okay. So should we look at your profile?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to share the screen and we're going to go to that.
Yeah, so for context, as we were going through the process, Ken reached out or sent an assessment to me and had me go through it. And I have gone through them before, so I have a feeling I know where they're going to be, but we have not gone through this. And, I'm excited to hear Ken's expert opinion of what comes up through it.
So when I do an assessment, it creates a 26-page document. So what I've picked out some pages I want to highlight for our purposes today, but everybody should understand, because you can get a disc done online. It's 2 pages. This is the reason why you want to do it for the certified professional. But so if you're looking at this, you can see that there's 2 graphs there. One's called an adaptive and one's called natural. So again, D is for dominance, I is for influence, S is for steadiness, and C is for compliance. So dominance measures how do you deal with risk, reward, and challenge. The higher the D, the more forceful a person you're going to be. I is how you want to engage with people. The higher you are, the more you're going to need to be around people. S is for steadiness. And these are the people that need information. And they're very big on relationships. High S people, when they give you their word, it's their bond, which is why they need so much information, because they don't want to let you down. They just want to do it right. And C is for compliance. How do you deal with rules and regulations? That's the above the line. Those are anything up in here. And below the line, if you're a low, excuse me, if you're a low D person, you tend to be more reflective. If you're a low I person, you tend to be more reserved. And if you're a low S, like our friend Brent here, you can see what that is you're just more dynamic, more active. And if you're a low C, you tend to be a little more what I call pioneering, a little more adventurous. You're willing to try things. So when we do a profile, you can see that there's an adaptive and a natural. And the adapted, as I put, and when you do a report, by the way, an assessment, you don't get these annotates. I did this for purpose of this feedback. But
Sure.
when I do a feedback, I do go through all of this at length. So, so when the adapted one is like a snapshot, if you think somebody's watching you while you're doing it or you're being observed, the natural is really who you are and probably who you've been since your mid-teens. If that's been your behavior, that's who you are.
Yep.
Also, when you're under pressure or stress, you will gravitate absolutely to your natural. Now, why this is important is, and what I said earlier, the profile will be a true indicator of who the person is, because this is who you are. And you know, there's no surprise. This means you're driven, you like to be around people, you like action, you like things on the go all the time, and you're always looking for different ways to do things. Is that you?
Nailed it.
To a T.
Yep.
So if I knew that about you after I've done this, if on this side, your D was down here, like it flip-flopped a little bit, I would have known you were trying to be something that you weren't, either to get the job or for other reasons. So that's why it's really critical to look at the whole assessment. So in your case, because you're DI, both low, I'm not worried about you. If you were my client.
And Ken, remind me, because I can't remember off the top of my head, but the assessment didn't take very long.
No, in fact, you did it in 9 minutes and 42 seconds.
Right.
And that's absolutely spot on for a high D.
Right.
I've had high S people, remember, they're about information, taking their time, getting it right. You know, they've taken 18 minutes or so.
Right.
But there is no right or wrong, again, about how long you take.
I just think it's interesting to share that you can get that info and also see when someone's maybe trying to, you know, give that different representation of themselves. This wasn't like an hour-long or 2-hour-long investment. It was a very quick kind of get in. Well, obviously for me, get in, get out.
Oh yeah. But here's the other thing. The way the algorithm is set up, if somebody doing this, for example, if all of them had been above the line and all these been below the line, and I've done thousands of these, but every once in a while I get a message through the algorithm that the person doing this was under undue stress. They either thought their job was on the line or whatever it is. Right. So if you had engaged me to do this, I said, Brent, when you were doing Ken's profile, he was worried about something. We got to throw this one out and we got to let him know, just relax and do it.
Sure.
Because otherwise it's meaningless. It's not a true representation. So this is who you are. And again, no surprise. So if this had flip-flopped, I'd be asking maybe some different questions. What was going on when you did it, et cetera, et cetera. Also, when it comes up where they're all above the line, I would say you're not being true to yourself. You're trying to be something for everybody. So it's not a true indicator. And just again, so also there are some natural disconnects, which I'm going to take you over here. And this is the wheel. And think about a team now. If you took every employee on your group and we plotted them in here, what a great visual to see where we align. So everybody on this side, the DI, they're more aggressive, faster paced, etc. Everybody on this side, a little bit slower paced. Hunters, gatherers. And neither is wrong. What is the role? What are you trying to fill?
Right.
Do you need somebody that's going to take your time, or do you want somebody over here? So you are what we call a persuader, which means you're somebody who's competitive, persuasive, but you like to get results through people because you have that high I. If this straight D, they're just all about results. They don't care who they have to step on.
What's the star versus the circle?
The star is what your adapted was. Okay. That's the adapted, and so on. Now we get to that push-pull that we talked about. That's when the natural disconnects, which is the D and the S. So somebody is very aggressive, but they're concerned about people. And I'm not saying you're not concerned about people. I didn't mean it like that. So part of them wants to be go, 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 and the other's pulling back, and I need more info, more info. That's the push-pull. That's the internal conflict.
And I think an interesting thing that you brought up before, I don't know if it was in our chat or if it was in discussion previous, but that there isn't there isn't like a perfect disc. There isn't like the ideal disc. There isn't anything like that. You mentioned a question that someone had come to you and asked, like, what's the ideal disc? And your immediate question asked back is, for what position?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that really is position, role, company, cultures, value, like all those things tie into understanding how the person's going to fit with the organization and in the specific role.
And let me illustrate that happened, because exactly what you said. This guy got it in his head that he needed salespeople. They had to be high D, high I. Okay, he just determined that. So I was working with a property management, not property management, I'm sorry, a realty company, commercial realty company. And they traditionally had hired these kind of people. So when we worked with them, I was able to show them that you actually can hire people that are up here. They'll just approach the job differently. It was that simple. And if you can accept that, they'll be successful. But if you've determined that this is what you want, it doesn't matter what I bring you. So again, be a little more open-minded. They'll just have a different approach. Yeah. This person here will make 100 cold calls and it wouldn't faze them. This person is more organized, might only have to make 50. Okay. Right. So again, back to this picture, whoever's watching, think about your whole team, plot on it, and no, this isn't like Trivial Pursuit. You don't have to fill every spot, but it's a great visual. If you're looking for people to be in sales or to drive the company and your whole team is over here, well, I guess maybe your new hires need to be over here. Or if everybody's driving, but nobody's filling the back end, maybe you look over here for new hires. Okay. So one of the things we do is we create something called a behavioral hierarchy. And what this is 12 variables put into 3 categories. So I call the first 4 your primary. And the way to think of this, Brent, these are behaviors you don't even think about. They just happen naturally. I'll come back. The second are what we call situational. I mean, they're all in your toolbox, but you'll pull them out just when you need to. And the last, you're rather indifferent about them. And again, these are not criticisms. So if we were to break this down, and if you look, you're the blue, and the national North American average is the red. So you can see on the ones where you are absolutely just your primary, you're ahead of the curve on all of them. No questions asked. When it's situational, you see you start to fall back. They're not your go-to, but they're in your toolbox. And the ones that you're indifferent, I mean, look where you line up. You're way on the far side. You're not even close to the median. It's kind of like a bell curve, the way to think of it. But that said, because it's a hierarchy, just because you're consistent is number 12, that doesn't mean you're not consistent. It means given a choice of these, before these, you'll take the first one.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because people totally they'll come to me and say, what do you mean I don't have an organized workplace?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that at all. It's organized for you. But if you're somebody who's a DI, your profile, and if the choice is to engage with people and so on, the last thing you want to do is tidy your desk.
Right.
So it doesn't mean you can't or won't. You're going to gravitate to where your behavior takes you.
Right.
So back to the interview process. So I'm not trying to make you seasick, but
oh, it's fine.
Okay. So what we do is the very first thing is your general characteristics. And there's 3 paragraphs. And the first measures your talents. The second, your problem solving. And then your third is your communication side. So again, if you've interviewed somebody and they've told you a bunch of things, this is going to prove that either they did or they didn't. So for example, I went and highlighted a couple for you. Hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
And now there's 3 things in there on your talents. And why I highlighted them? Because they also could be possible disconnects with the people you work with. Tell me if you agree. Just look at the yellows.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So again, these are not judgments. I want to be very clear to everybody. DISC is not a judgment. It never is, because there's no right or wrong. But if I'm hiring you and I know this about you, how do I manage you? Knowing that who you're going to work with.
Right.
So again, it's a potential possible disconnect. So when I'm doing this one-on-one feedbacks, I will usually ask the person I'm debriefing, pick a couple sentences, tell me why they're important to you, and who do you think would need to know them in the organization. That's how I do the debriefing. The whole point of the debriefing is to get people talking. I'm listening. It's not me just to talk to them, just to tell them stuff. Again, it goes back to the core part. How do we use this? What do I learn from this? How do I move forward? So on your problem solving, likes to make decisions quickly. No surprise there.
It's almost the second sentence there is almost verbatim one of our core values about being relentless and how we're always seeking new ways to solve problems and innovating. Like that's crazy.
But again, remember, your natural disconnect is the high S.
Yeah.
Because they are going to be the ones that are polar opposite. They're going to be slower. They're going to be more calculating. See, a high D is you will make a decision and you'll live with it. And if it's wrong, you'll make another one.
Yeah.
A high S can't do that. They need to get the right decision based on all the information they can glean from a situation, from anything. And part of it is because they're so relationship based, they think if they make the wrong decision, they've hurt somebody.
Right.
So is that a negative quality? No. So when you're a high D, so when you're with a high S, you got to figure out, okay, when will you tell me the answer by?
Right.
And then I think I mentioned in our first conversation, if you tell me you want the answer by Friday, don't go looking for it on Thursday.
Right. Yeah.
Got to give them till Friday. And then the third one is your communication style. And the one he may lack the patience. This is exactly the point I was trying to illustrate. I told them, what's wrong? I told them. But did you? So a little tip I do when we're doing some workshops is ask the simple question. Are we good? Do you have enough? Are we clear?
Yeah.
Those little conversation pieces. So that's how you use that page. And then this is what you bring to the table. And when you're hiring somebody, it's kind of important to look at this. Again, if I'm doing debriefing, I would ask people, do you think everybody in the organization knows this about you? Now, the flip side of this is what you're bringing to the table, and it doesn't fill what I'm looking for in the job. Why would I hire you?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just kind of scrolling. We do a thing on how to communicate with you. And again, I picked up 3 that I thought were, I think, spot on, particularly the third one highlighted.
Yeah.
But if
Absolutely.
I don't know that about you, and I come in there and I sit down and I, so did you see the game last night? What's, hey, did you, all that kind of stuff. Your nails, you're going to start like your back hair is going to start standing up. But so I know if I'm going to meet with you, and again, these are not negatives.
For sure.
It's okay. I'm going to come in. I decide we're going to talk. It's almost like a mental agenda. We're going to stay on point. We're staying on point. But also because you're a high I, right? Then when that part is done, you may want to engage a little bit. Hey, did you see the game? But you don't want to lead with it. Why are you here? Tell me why we're talking.
Yeah, I often feel, just even hearing that, feel myself like kind of the opposite in the sense that I'm open to the engaging piece and all that, but eventually there will be a point when I feel myself go, okay, we're done here, hard line, let's get to whatever it is we need to talk about. And there's no kind of seamless transition. It's just kind of like, okay, we're done the chit chat. Let's get to
See,
the nuts.
interesting that you said that. If I was debriefing you and you were the owner of Express, I would say, why don't you try it the other way?
Yeah.
Just try it the other way. Get the business part out of it.
Yeah.
And then you can do the other, because you're right. It's hard to go from chit chat to business.
Yeah.
People don't often make that transition as quickly as you will. And then they go, are we talking business now? And
Yeah.
wait a minute. What are we doing? What are we doing? So then we also, on your checklist on how not to communicate with you. Oh, sorry. And if I was doing this as a one-on-one, I'd ask again, who knows this about you and who needs to know this about you? And here's how not to. This is very characteristic of a high D.
Yeah.
And this also goes back to what we were just talking about.
This is saying, don't assume that I heard what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, it's not a criticism, but again, it's a function of That's your behavior.
Yeah.
You're driven. You want to do things. You want to keep things moving.
Yeah.
The worst thing I can do is put you in neutral.
Or
The
assume
worst
that
thing I could do
I'm
is,
pointed in the right direction.
or the worst thing I could tell you, there's nothing for you to do today, Brent.
Yeah.
That would make you crazy. I'm going to do a little skipping here. This is a great page where you're doing performance reviews and so on. So this shows you how you are perceived. And the way I do this, would you agree that those 6 words describe you as you see yourself, Ben? Just the first 6.
Yeah.
Of course. So then we do, this is how others see you. When you're slightly stressed and the other when you're very stressed.
100%.
So on. And it's kind of an eye opener sometimes when I'm doing a debriefing, thinking, holy crap. I kind of thought that, but when you see it actually there, and why is it important? It's just simply, again, to understand. Now, if I'm your boss and I believe this is you and I see you demonstrating these, I think it's incumbent upon the employer to say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Is there something wrong? And I'm not advocating, your home life. Just, is there something wrong? Is there something we forgot to tell you about? Did you feel out of the loop? Because that's one of the things that makes people crazy is they're not in the loop when they think they should be in the loop.
Right.
About something. So it's a great page, and it's really hits home for a lot of people. And when you're stressed, remember I said at the beginning, your profile kicks in, your natural profile. So when you're stressed, you're going to become more demanding, more aggressive, even a little more abrasive. But that's just because that's the profile. And it's not like you consciously decide, today I'm going to be more aggressive. It's usually because maybe somebody's let you down or didn't meet a deadline or something.
Right.
Okay. I want to get to, okay, just a couple more pages. Sorry. So we do a thing on what Brent wants and what Brent needs. So the way I break it down, your wants are your drivers. What drives you? So then we go through these with the person, and then wants drives you. So this is what gets you up in the morning and gets you to work. But what your needs are is what sustains you. So for example, if one of your needs is you have to talk to 10 people a day, and then on your needs, you're at work, you only talk to one person. Well, then it's not going to work out. So I put in brackets the word culture. The culture of the environment, the business has to sustain your needs or the future employees' needs. And there's the list of things that you need. You need, consistency. Oh, you've got vacations.
I think it ties in so well to an interesting exercise I went through about like individual goals, because we were trying to establish a bonus based on a goal we were trying to hit. And I kind of tabled one idea, and of the 10 people, it resonated with 1 or 2, me and the one other person. And then I was like, okay, we'll scrap that, tried another one that resonated with only 2 people. And ultimately we realized that there wasn't a catch-all that would make everybody really happy, that everybody had their own like motivators, their own factors. And this is obviously something that helps you kind of get alignment or clarity on what those are for the individuals, and help maybe put in, again, you talked about having salespeople, it might not necessarily be just the commission and bonuses, but the little spiffs and rewards. Some people might want time off. Some people might want to be the leader of a new project. Some people might want, rest and a spa day or whatever. There's so many different things, and it's never going to be a catch-all.
This opens the world of dialogue. All of this opens the world of communication. But think about it this way. If, say, you're shortlisting, everybody's composed. This could be the ultimate tiebreaker, so to speak. When you look at what Brent's wants and needs are versus Ken's wants and needs, that might be, okay, well, we really can't give him that. Our culture won't sustain that for him. And then he will leave. Don't ask you to get a job in a lighthouse.
Right.
Won't work. Will not work. And then we do this one page called the areas for improvement. I like to sit with somebody when we're setting performance goals or trying to find out some things they could work on. Usually I ask them, let's pick 2. And why are you having a problem with this? What can we do to make it better for you? How can you improve?
Right.
And at all times, right, it's never a negative debriefing. And I think even in our short, and this was very quick, and we touched up, never once was there a criticism. Never once was there a judgment.
Right.
It is what it is. Yeah. So I think, so the whole, a debriefing, by the way, takes about a full hour when you just do the full debriefing. There's some pages I didn't show you today because, but I wanted people to get the flavor of, it's not a 2-page thing. You just have a quick look at it. It's done. It's multi-layered. Put this with the interview process and what you've said about the whole process. I mean, it all suddenly should start to click. This person is the real deal.
How long does the process normally take for you guys? Yeah, maybe you can take a couple, last minutes here as we close things off.
Sure.
Just if an employer were to reach out and engage with you guys, like, I don't know if there's a typical size of business you tend to work with, and just not necessarily the cost. Obviously, if they want to reach out and get more information, they can do that. And we'll make sure we link your website and your LinkedIn and all that stuff. But just in terms of I guess, I don't know if there's different like commitments, but what does it look like if there's a business that's looking for more information and they reach out to you?
Well, if you're asking what's the turnaround time, we can either turn them around within 24 hours once they're completed.
Right.
And you went through the process. Once we're hired, we send out a link and it's password protected.
Right.
The respondent then does it at their convenience. And what we do ask is they do it in one sitting, sort of in a private kind of situation. The beauty of this password situation is it never times out. So they don't have to rush home, feel stressed, they have to do it. Then I get it, I prepare it, and then I can usually turn it over within 24 to 36 hours.
Right.
I don't know if that answers the question, but in terms of the engagement, it goes back to what is it you're looking for? What do you need? We'll do our best to fulfill what we can for you. The other thing is we also have other assessment tools, which I would mention. There's one called 12 Driving Forces, which is a combination of a DISC and what actually truly drives you. And it's about a 53-page assessment that I put together. So we know what's a DISC, but now what is actually driving you to be a DISC? And I think those are great tools, I would say, for upper management. And then we have stress assessments. We have EQ assessments. We have team assessments, which we won't get. But if somebody called me and asked me about those things, I would be really happy to explain. But does that answer?
Yeah, for sure. And
okay.
I think like, again, if this resonates with anybody, if anybody feels that there's either a great opportunity for their business or maybe they're suffering with a weakness, obviously we'll have your links connected there where they can reach out and connect with you directly. This will obviously be going up on LinkedIn, so your LinkedIn page will be featured there, and welcome anybody to reach out. Ken, my like parting question that I always like to ask, I know we've spent a good chunk of time going through this and it's hard to kind of summarize, but my parting question is just if there was someone that's made it this far, and there was one kind of takeaway that you had based on what we discussed or not discussed, but just if you had one parting either takeaway piece of advice for somebody with respect to what we discussed, what would you say it is?
If I had just finished your debriefing as what we just did?
Or just through our chat.
Oh, well, first of all, to you, at the end of the debrief is just embrace it. You just remember and understand it. But just remember, everybody's not you.
Right.
That's that part. And get the same thing I've said all through this. It's about creating this baseline of understanding. It's a crazy time out there. People don't know what they're looking for. If you can provide a place where people feel like every day was a challenge, where they felt they made a difference and they felt safe, then this is kind of the tools to help them. It's a tool. My parting advice is use the tools, whether it's through myself or whatever. Always use the tools that maybe you didn't train to do. And the last thing is, just don't go on the net and read about, like, use people. That's why I use Brent. This is what they do. This is what I do.
Yeah, that's great.
Use it to your advantage. It's not to your detriment.
I sign off our other videos that we do for our client and our candidate journey videos, just on every minute you spend investing in your process, you'll hugely benefit from. Whether you're the job seeker and you're investing in how to navigate the process better, or a business, you'll always win by investing. So that's great, Ken. Really appreciate you joining us today. Can't wait to share this info. Hugely beneficial. And again, I encourage anybody to reach out and connect with Ken if they have any questions or interested in learning more.
Please do, and thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And
awesome.
Thank you.